It's time to rank the NFC East receivers. Who has the best wide receiver room or the best wide receiver duo in the NFC East? We've got it right here on Ref the District. Let's go. Greetings and salutations, and welcome to Ref the District. I'm Nathan Perry. That's the Stoner, and this is the NFC East wide receiver rankings. We're going to look at the whole position group. But realistically, Stoner, I think we're really focused on targets 1 and 2, right? I think that's fair. I mean, the depth is important, and there's some number 3 guys that are worth talking about. But in most of these position groups, the top 2 guys are, in my opinion, are where the focus is going to be.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Nathan. But I think there's a little bit of misconception here with this group in the NFC East, because I think they're a lot closer than a lot of people want to believe. But I will say this, having looked over the rest of the divisions within all of football, top to bottom, I think this is the strongest wide receiver group in all of football.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me of our QB conversation we had. And if you haven't looked at that, make sure you go check out that video as well. As we're going through each of the rankings, we did QBs, running backs, now wide receivers. This wide receiver room, the NFC East, is top to bottom might be the best. And it made ranking these very difficult. Now, if you like the opportunity to rank them, make sure you hit that comment section. Let us know how you would rank them before you even finished watching the video. But don't forget, also hit that like button, sub to the channel, and then join us on Wednesday live, 7:30 Eastern, every Wednesday here on YouTube and Facebook. Stoner, I mentioned it was really hard to give the rankings here because there's a lot of good wide receivers. Yeah. So let's just move right into who we put at the bottom. Now, the way we've been doing this is I rank them and you get to argue with me.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. So starting off, Giants at the bottom. Yeah. They have a number 1 guy, Malik Neighbors. He didn't get a full rookie season, but you can tell he's going to be special. And Slayton as the number 2 guy, I feel like is underrated a little bit. He is a good wide receiver there for the Giants. Now, it is important also to note that I did this agnostic of QB situation. So the wide receivers in Washington don't get a boost because they have Jaden Daniels. Likewise, the Giants aren't getting knocked because they had poor QB play last year, and Russell Wilson might not be a great quarterback at this point in his career. So that this isn't into the factor. Just these wide receivers, I think that they're a good group, but I do think that they fall down towards the bottom of the rankings. A large part because Malik Neighbors, while special, didn't get a full rookie season.
Well, I think that's fair, but I think I think it's really close between all 4 of these groups. If you want to look at some of those that are at the top and you want to say they separated themselves, I don't think they separated themselves that much. So I agree with you that the Giants have the 4th best group within the NFC East, but I don't think it's like 1, 2, 3, 4 that easily. I think it's something very much closer to 1, 2, 2B, 2C. So I think these other 3 are all really, really close. And the one at the top kind of distinguishes itself. But look, Malik Neighbors is special. And while he only got 15 games, he still, of all the receivers in this division, had the best numbers of any of them this past year.
Wow.
He had 109 catches, 1,204 yards, and 7 touchdowns from the likes of Daniel Jones and some of their backups they had throughout the year. And some people have already quibbled with saying Darius Slayton is their number 2 because Wan'Dale Robinson had such a big number in terms of catches, but he wasn't like this big threat. Most of his stuff was short. So he had 93 catches, but only had 699 yards. That's yards per catch average is pretty low, but still you're talking about for their number 2 receivers, you're talking about 2 guys who are pretty much the same between Wan'Dale and Darius Slayton. You can quibble with that all you want. Malik Neighbors is probably the best, but because the drop-off at number 2 with all of these other teams, the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Commanders, they all have very good number twos, whereas the Giants, maybe their number two is not quite as good. So I agree with you, Nathan.
Yeah.
But I mean, Malik Neighbors, 109 catches and 1,200 yards in his rookie year.
170 targets, 13 games started. That's kind of where I was thinking of on the
Started, yeah.
didn't get a whole lot of games in. That's missing, 4 games as a starter. But yeah, 170 targets in the 15 games he played. High volume guy. We're familiar with him. Abusing Mike Davis. Like that was the eye opener on the biggest eyesore of free agency, and the only blemish on Adam Peters' just fantastic free agent signings was Mike Davis just struggling to stick with Neighbors. He's a very special player. But I do agree with you. Slayton or Robinson, whoever you did want to put at the number 2 for the Giants, ranked as the lowest of the 8 in my opinion. And that's what a big factor.
Yeah, and that's what does it. You may say you can argue about Neighbors being maybe the best number 1 out of all of them. I mean, you'd have a tough time winning that argument, but you can at least be in the argument.
Sure.
But you can't be in the argument with any of the number 2s on these other teams with the Giants number 2, and that's kind of what separates them and puts them at the bottom. But I just go on about Neighbors, and when we saw him, like you said, for those 2 games, I don't remember what his target numbers were, but I think in one game it was like 18.
Yeah, it
targets.
was serious double-digit targets in that first game.
But we'll remember him fondly for the one drop he had in the first game on that 4th down play that would have extended their drive and allowed them to possibly win that game. So we appreciate him for doing that. That was a huge drop in that game, and that was week 2 last year, if I remember. And
week 2, September 15th. He had 18 targets, 10 receptions, 127 yards, and a touchdown.
Wow. Yeah, from Daniel Jones.
So, and he followed it up with 11 targets, 9 catches, 59 yards when they faced again in November. So even though he didn't, have quite the volume and quite the yardage, he was still the number 1 target there for the New York Giants. Super special player. I enjoy watching him. I hate the fact that he has to be on the opposite side. Where you put him, that's interesting, is where you put him in number, as the top wide receiver. Yeah. But like you said, number 2 here is the reason why he's getting there. Let me pause a little bit. Because I know I'm going to get in trouble.
Okay.
And so I want to make sure you, the viewer, continue watching throughout. By all means, pause and yell at me in the comment section, but listen to the arguments here before you get too mad at me. That said, number 3 here, I'm putting the Washington Commanders, our Washington Commanders. It was really hard not to have to take off those burgundy and gold glasses, Stoner. We all love Terry McLaurin. He's probably the most consistent wide receiver out of the bunch.
Yeah.
It is hard to know what Deebo Samuel we're getting. A little bit injured last year, some questions on the weight. He's looking great this offseason. I know a lot of us are already working on our head that he's going to go back to that all-pro season he had 4 years ago. So that being said, I do like this group. I think that it's a much improved group from last year. But this is a wide receiver group that I think is honestly being more carried by the stellar QB play than it being a quality 1 through 5 type room. But the 1-2 punch here between Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel is exciting.
Hey, Nathan, I'm with you. I know we're going to get roasted by Commanders fans for having them number 3 in the division, but I'm with you. I had them in that same spot because of those factors that you said with Deebo. You just don't know what you're going to get at this point in his career. He's just had a couple of down years, injury or whatever reason he has. Now, he brings a different dimension as a number 2 receiver than these other guys do, in that he can run the ball out of the backfield, and he's a little bit more explosive than some of these other number 2 in terms of out of the backfield. I'm not talking about down the field. But you have to put him at number 3, unfortunately, because these other groups are just so good. And that's not a slight on Washington. That's just a nod to how good the other two groups are. But I'm with you when you look at them, and with Deebo, and if you were to add Noah Brown, remember Noah Brown was the number 2 guy last year.
Technically, OZ was.
Well, yeah, number wise,
yeah.
but in terms of who was the guy they went to the most until he got hurt at the end of the year, it was Noah Brown, and now he's back and he's your number 3. That's pretty good 1, 2, 3 right there. But again, these other teams have good 1, 2, 3s as well. So while it's hard to admit it, these guys to me are definitely the 3rd best within the division. I mean, McLaurin had his best year. McLaurin doesn't miss games. That's the best part of Terry McLaurin, is he will always be out there. I think it was like 4 years ago when I said on one of our podcasts that he doesn't get hurt. He never gets hurt. And then you guys freaked out and knocking on wood. And I'm
like a ankle injury there in the preseason where
true.
You did it. You jinxed him.
But he never missed a game since I said that, I do believe, in terms of injury. So 17 games every year. You know what you're going to get. You're going to get 80 catches. You're going to get 1,100 yards. And then this past year, the 13 touchdowns, which were not only a career high and the first time he got into double digits, but a team record. And this team has had some incredible wide receivers over the year. For him to break that record is pretty special, but got to put him at number 3. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, like I said, we'll dive more in on Wednesday when we have our flagship program about what this wide receiver room is going to look like, what you can expect, and really how it kind of compares overall, not just the NFC East, but the NFL. Because there are aspects to this room I like. I like Lane. He's a 4th rounder, so it's not something you want to like bank on, but there's a lot of tool sets there that he brings to the table that Washington needed. He's a deep threat type guy with the speed that he brings. And this is a super fast wide receiver room. You have unlocked potential in Luke McCaffrey. You got Noah Brown. You got Gallup coming back into the NFL, as a savvy vet. This room could come into something, but it does fall short in little areas. And Deebo Samuel being on the older end, and he's an athlete, but there was some serious question of whether or not he's a true wide receiver 2, even though he will be wide receiver 2 here. But at this stage, he's more of that athlete, like you said. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But right now, number 3 in the NFC East for me. Number 2, like you said, the drop off isn't like what we had with the running backs. Going from Saquon to the next room is a huge drop off. That being said, number 2 for me was solidly number 2, and that was the Dallas Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb has some serious credentials to his name, and he could be potentially the best wide receiver in the NFC East, arguably. George Pickens is an exciting player and maybe a bit problematic at times, but in the 3 years he's been in the league, he's always hit 800 yards. He's had horrible QB play out there in Pittsburgh, and now he's going to be with Dak Prescott as the number 2 guy, and I think that's really good. The rest of the wide receiver room I think is just okay, but when you're looking at the duos, when you're looking at the guys who are going to get the top targets as a wide receiver to their name, because they do have a tight end they like out there. They have some running backs who they're going to use in the passing attack. So these 2 would be probably targets 1 and 2, but 3, 4, and 5 are going to come from tight ends or running backs. So when you're looking at these top 2 targets, Stoner, there's a lot to like in Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, CeeDee Lamb had what many considered kind of a down year this past year because of quarterback play. He didn't have Dak most of the year. And the dude still caught 101 passes for almost 1,200 yards and 6 touchdowns. I mean, that's a down year for CeeDee Lamb. So he's special. Anybody who says he's not special is just crazy. He's obviously special. I would put him in this NFC East. He would be my number 1 guy in the NFC East. I think he's an unbelievable player. And if you bring in Pickens, now they had Jalen Tolbert last year, who I think had a pretty good year for a number 2 wide receiver. But Pickens, he's a different guy. He's different off the field. He's different when he doesn't get the ball. But when that ball comes his way, he's going to catch that ball. George Pickens is a heck of a wide receiver. He is the epitome of mercurial, I think is the word that people like to throw around.
That's a good word. That's a good word.
But he's a stud as well. And like you said, he did his damage in Pittsburgh, where you had a bad quarterback play, like you said, but also you had a offensive coordinator who just likes to run the ball all the time.
Stagnant offense,
yeah. So, and to do what he did last year in only 14 games and still get 60 catches for 900 yards and a few touchdowns, it's still pretty darn good when he was getting criticized left and right. Deservedly so, by the way. You know, sometimes when you isolate certain plays and it's not giving you the whole picture, but with George Pickens, when you isolate those plays, that's the full picture. That's what he's doing out there. He might cost you a game, but he might also win you a game as well. And we've seen that here against Washington. I like George Pickens. He's going to be a good addition, and it's going to be tough to stop. Thank goodness Washington addressed the cornerback room and went out and drafted one early in the second round or late in the second round.
He's very, very much like the old school diva wide receiver that used to be very prominent. I feel like there's been issues with AJ Brown kind of speaking about his team. CeeDee Lamb can still be seen as kind of a bit of a diva. Terry's never been that. And Malik Neighbors is still too new for it as far as your number one. But George Pickens is definitely the diva wide receiver through and through. And he's very emotional, very passionate, makes for very exciting on the field antics when he gets in the face of the cornerbacks and everything. But like you said, he is a guy, when you're looking at the number twos, he's number two in the NFC East, but that's only because the guy who we're going to be talking about in a little bit moment, it could be a wide receiver one on most teams. But he was, to me, ranked very highly as the number two wide receiver. So, I do rank him above Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel might end up having a better year, but George Pickens at this time, as young as he is, as explosive as he is, to me, he's a very, very good number two wide receiver.
It'll be interesting to see also what Dallas does offensively, having a new coaching staff, bringing in an offensive-minded coach. I mean, McCarthy was offensive-minded as well, but bringing in a new offensive-minded coach and kind of seeing how that is going to work out. A rookie head coach having to deal with CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. Good luck with that. That's going to be fun for him to have to deal with, and hopefully, they'll implode against Washington. Washington's got them on Christmas Day, right? That's one of the games. So hopefully they implode on Christmas Day against Washington.
Give us a little bit of a Christmas present. Well, number one on the list for a second week in a row, second position group in a row, going to be the NFC East winners here in the Philadelphia Eagles. AJ Brown, fantastic wide receiver, top 10 in the NFL. Probably my second favorite wide receiver, not Terry McLaurin in this group here. Just very dominant. And then Devontae Smith, a guy who, though he is smaller, he has wide receiver one credentials to his name. He is a special player. And the rest of the room, Jahan Dotson, former first round pick, even if they didn't bring up the fifth year option, he's a good wide receiver 3 for them. And then the rest of the room looks pretty good as well. So the Eagles, for me, taking the top shelf here, but narrow as it may be.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously, just about every position group that they have is top. That's what happens when you win the Super Bowl. But yeah, AJ Brown is excellent. Devontae Smith-Pelly, as I like to call him, is excellent. Now, both of them only played 13 games. They did have some injuries that they've been dealing with here and there, but in a run-heavy offense like Philadelphia is with Saquon Barkley, 67 and 68 catches between the two of them for almost 2,000 yards and 15 touchdowns between the two of them. These guys, AJ Brown got Emmanuel Forbes kicked out of Washington, essentially. I mean, he abused Forbes so much that his confidence never recovered, and they ended up releasing him the next year in his second year in the league as a first-round draft pick. And Devontae Smith, speed, catches everything, doesn't drop anything, except, again, against Washington when they had a chance to actually win the game there late in the season, and he dropped it and allowed Washington to come back and win that one. But I don't think there's a better duo in the NFC alone, not just the NFC East with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Yeah. They don't have the huge numbers because of Saquon Barkley, but they still have massive monster numbers anyway.
Yeah, again, trying to take away the offensive, play calling and the QB and separate those to something else, and just looking at the wide receivers. These are two very, very good wide receivers here, and when they make up the bulk of your targets, you're very happy if you're the team, and most teams in the NFL would be happy with this 1-2 punch in the wide receiver room. Devontae Smith mentioned it, 13 games last year, still had 800 yards, 89 targets, 68 catches. And again, this is an offense that wasn't passing the ball as much. Had 1,000 yards the 2 years prior and just under 1,000 his rookie year. Very good wide receiver too. AJ, like the fact that AJ was traded to the Eagles will forever baffle me. And what the Titans were not able to do off of that trade, and how it propelled the Eagles into a dominant nature that they are. It won't be forgivable, but A.J. Brown, number 2 wide receiver overall on here, losing out to CeeDee Lamb, in my opinion, but still a very, very good wide receiver 1. Helped Philadelphia get the Super Bowl.
Well, let me ask you this then. You just kind of brought it up. How would you rank the 4 number 1 receivers within the division? So
this is actually how I ended up doing this rankings, by the way, is I just was just like, let me focus on the duos and who has, let me just rate the duos. And then I assigned them a number, right? So I had CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, then Terry McLaurin, Malik Neighbors. That might be blasphemous to the Giants fans, but I'm valuing consistency over the guy who's going into his sophomore year. Then I have Smith, Pickens, Deebo, Slayton is how I've ranked the 8 wide receivers is how I did it. So,
yeah. And I think that's fair. I probably I'm the president of the Terry McLaurin fan club. I think he's amazing. I think he's a top 13 receiver in the NFL. He's the perfect human and the perfect football player for this organization. But I mean, CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, and Malik Neighbors off of only 1 year, 109 catches and 1,200 yards. And that I got to rank him above Terry McLaurin at this point.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want Malik Neighbors on my team in place of Terry McLaurin.
No.
Because of what Terry McLaurin brings to the team overall and what he's done over the 8 years I think he's been here, and the quarterbacks that he's had to deal with, and how he's just consistently put up the numbers, but also consistently just been the positive attitude and the winning attitude, and no matter what, no matter how the team's doing. So sorry, I'd put him 4th in this league, but I still love him. Still the president. Can't take my fan card away.
Nope. And like I said, we'll talk more about this on Wednesday. So join us live 7:30 Eastern on Wednesdays right here on YouTube and Facebook. That's our NFC East rankings. We have the New York Giants coming in at 4, Washington coming in at 3, Dallas Cowboys number 2, and the Philadelphia Eagles taking the top spot here for your wide receiver rankings. How did you rank them? Let us know in the comment section. Make sure to hit that like button on your way out. And until next time,
can't wait to see how George Pickens blows up this year.
Be a fan.